If you want talk, games, and fun all rolled into one, well, you've come to the right place. This is The Game Show, where host Bradley Clarke and his special guests talk about the world of television game and competition shows. But Bradley's guests aren't here to just talk. They came to play a game as well. What will today's topic be? What game does Bradley have planned? There's only one way to find out.
It's time to start the show.
You heard the man. Welcome to The Game Show. And here's your host, the Bradster himself, Bradley Clarke.
Ah, the sweet sound of theme music. Thank you once again for your fantastic intro, Austin Angelo. I'm Bradley Clarke, and welcome to another exciting episode of The Game Show, the talk show all about the world of television game and competition shows. And you know what? I'm feeling like I want to do another Survivor episode. And this episode seems like a fine one to devote to Survivor, so why not? As of now, there have been over 500 people to play the game of Survivor, but not all the castaways are as memorable as others. However, I can guarantee you that if you're a Survivor fan, this man is certainly on your list of the most memorable castaways in the history of the game.
So what do you want to call me? You want to call me the orchestrator for orchestrating a beautiful move at this point in the game that does two things. Keeps my initial game plan intact, and I don't have to compromise by keeping weak people around and voting out one of the strongest, most manipulative, and possibly most deceitful players to date? Or do you want to call me the Dragon Slayer because I'm cutting the head off of the dragon? You guys call me whatever you want to, because at this point in time, I feel brilliant! You know, if you look at it, to defeat an army, you have to cut off the head of the dragon, which is why I nicknamed Brendan the Dragon. Hence my name, the Dragon Slayer.
The ancient samurai used to say that if you wanted to win the war, you had to cut off the head of the dragon. You, my friend, are the dragon, and I am the Dragon Slayer.
The Dragon Slayer has vanquished the dragon once and for all. Over. The battle has already been won. Victory is mine.
Currently, he is one of only 21 players to have played the game 3 times, finishing 5th on Survivor Tocantins, 12th on Survivor Heroes vs. Villains, and 2nd on Survivor South Pacific. But he holds the distinction of being Survivor's sole Dragon Slayer. Joining me on the line is the one and only Benjamin Coach Wade. Coach, welcome to the game show.
Thank you. Good to be here, my man.
I am so excited. I'm wearing my Heroes vs. Villains t-shirt as we speak.
You should have on a Tocantins shirt, man. That Heroes and Villains, that was my worst season. Doggone it.
Well, it's funny because Tocantins premiered when I was in 6th grade. We go way back.
Good. I like that.
And I would say that your best season would have been South Pacific.
Well, I mean, it depends, right? I mean, it's funny when I meet people, I have kind of a distinctive look, big nose, hawk-shaped, long hair. And so people recognize me all the time, and they come up to me, and other people will say, "Did you ever win?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I won 3 times." And they're like, "You did?" So, I mean, I tell everybody that because for me, when you look at the history and the legacy of the show, even Jeff Probst says at the moment he's not going to do an all-winners season because there's not enough great winners. There are great winners, but for me, winning translates to being a legend, and a legend is somebody that's going to be remembered for their actions. So actually, you know, when you think about that, I think South Pacific was my best game play, but for me, the best moment, the best legacy leaving time was that first time. Raw, fresh, hadn't really watched the show, was not a student of the game, which is a good thing, I think. And to come out there and just be really authentic and original, I feel really blessed, you know, in all humility. I would feel really blessed to have been able to play the show in the first place and then to do it 3 times, especially after going back and watching the first 13 seasons, which I'd never seen. I just finished with Cook Islands 2 nights ago. And so to really see the history of the show, and I think there's been so many big contestants. There's been a lot of big contestants that got voted off early, so they never really blossomed into a full character, and to have my shenanigans be pretty original and authentic was really cool. I think the longer the show goes on, the more I feel like my place in the game is solidified because there's just nobody else out there like me, and that could be good or that could be bad, but I feel like it was a good run.
Well, I consider you a Survivor All-Star, Survivor Game Changer, a Survivor Legend, and whatever other title the Survivor superfans want to put on memorable players.
Excellent.
And what I really loved about Tocantins is that so far it's in the middle of the Survivor run as of right now. But what was great about it was currently it's the last season to be original Survivor in the sense that it was 16 players, there was no 100 idols, no advantage shenanigans and all that stuff. And it was 2 tribes of 8 strangers put in the middle of nowhere, and let's see what happens. And I think that's why character types like you were able to form, and we got to know who you are as a person through our TV sets, because the idols and the advantages weren't defining you. You were defining yourself.
That's a really good point. I think that as the game goes on, and this last season was great new cast. The advantages were cool, but it does become about big moves and less about the character development. And I still think that the character development is there, or else we wouldn't watch the show still. But you're right. I mean, it is focused on big moves. There are twists. And, it was like the last old school season. Watching the first few seasons, I definitely can see that I'm an old school type of player. I mean, I had never watched that. So for me to go out there and say, I want to play with honor and integrity, I want to take the strongest to the end, I want people that are here to be deserving, I thought I was coming up with that. I thought I was making that from new, and come to find out that, those people were talking about that in the first few seasons. But you're right. I mean, they really focused on the character development. It was a great season. Any other season, Tyson would have been the absolute superstar. I always feel a little bit bad about that because, he and I are friends, and I kind of stole the show away from him. But he was original. It was me. Steven has become a great player. JT, it was just such a good, fresh cast that focused on what we were doing instead of what different changes and nuances of the game were in play.
Tocantins premiered in 2009, and can you believe it's already been 10 years since the show premiered?
That's crazy.
I find it crazy too, because we've both grown 10 years older, but I was a 6th grader, and now I'm the big 21.
It's crazy because in some ways it seems like yesterday, and in another way it seems like it was a different lifetime. And, a lot has changed in my life since then. And, my oldest son is getting to the age where he can start watching. So we started watching Tocantins together. And I never watched the season. I mean, I would go to watch parties, but you really can't watch because there's so much noise and people asking questions. And so, you really don't get a full scope of it. Now going back, and I'm able to watch myself really for the first time. And it's cool. It's really cool to see. Sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I came up with that, or, man, what was I thinking? Or any other season, you think about it, if I had played with Boston Rob on his first season, man, I would have gone first. I would have been like Hunter. Nobody would have ever known who I was. And so I feel like there's that luck that's always involved in playing the game, and it's just crazy to think it's 10 years ago.
So before going on Survivor Tocantins, you hardly ever watched the show. You barely knew much about the show. So what was it that actually convinced you to go on to Survivor?
I get this question a lot, and I'm surprised that it's not more common knowledge with the internet these days, probably because maybe in the beginning people were too worried about what I was doing and saying rather than, why'd you go on the show anyways if you weren't a fan? So I was coaching a university in Missouri, and my soccer team, there was a couple of the girls that submitted a profile to The Bachelor. And so I got an email randomly one day that said, hey, there were some people that submitted your profile to be on The Bachelor. We don't think you're the right fit for our show. And, of course, that really made me upset. I was single and thought I was a ladies' man. And they were like, you're not the right fit for our show, but there's a show that you should be on. It's called Survivor. And so let's go back a little ways, okay? 1999, I was approached by a guy that said, you need to apply for this show. I mean, I had been a professional kayaker in Southern California. I'm not going to say I was well known, but people knew about my exploits. And it was so fresh that if you were to say, hey, you remember that guy that was on the front page of the LA Times, crazy guy that went down to South America in a kayak, then it would have connected the dots. And so anyway, I was told to apply for the show. I looked at the application, got excited for it. I was like, this is my next chapter in life. I was a very young soccer coach, just gotten into the business and still dabbling at kayaking. And so I started looking at the premise of the show. And when I first saw it, I thought the idea was going to be great. It's survival of the fittest. The most deserving at the end wins. I mean, I've proven I can go without any food for long bits of time, even outside of Survivor. And so I thought, this is the show that I'm going to be on. I'm convinced that I could have very easily been on that first season. And so I started looking in more details. And when I saw that people voted other people off, and then they vote for the person that has $1 million. It really wasn't about survival of the fittest. And so it kind of soured me, so I put it away. It was a big rave, exploded. I would turn on an episode, And of course, you can't just watch a single episode of Survivor. You have to start from the beginning and see what they're building. And so I just wasn't interested. So it's interesting then, we talk about the 10-year mark. You look at almost 10 years from that date when I first heard about Survivor, and now I get a random email from people that are casting The Bachelor saying you should apply for this show. And so there was no crossover. It was not the same casting department. They literally sent me a link to the CBS website. I told my assistant coaches about it. They were kind of like my family at the time. And they were like, wow, man, that's crazy. And, we were watching other reality shows, and they were like, you should do it. And so that was kind of planted the seed for me to be on a reality show. I filled out a form just like everybody else, the application. I did a tape. That was like the last year, I think, that they still wanted VHS tapes. I sent in a tape of myself. I wish I had that tape. I sent in the original. It was an awesome tape. I would love to put it up on the internet because I basically said what I said in casting. I'm like, hey, this is Coach Wade, and you've never met anybody like me. And it showed me then in the weight room, I was pumping iron, and I was like, I'm a university soccer coach. And then it goes and shows 30 seconds of me coaching my actual team in an actual practice, nothing manufactured. And then it comes back to me, and I'm doing something else. And maybe I was dressed in a suit, and I was like, they call me the Renaissance Man because I also conduct a symphony orchestra in California. Then it shows me conducting the symphony in real time, 30 seconds. And then the last thing I say is I used to be a professional kayaker. And then it's got something from whoever it was, OCN and Channel 7 or whatever. So it's like actual footage of me being a kayaker. They came back to me and I said, you've never seen anybody like me before. This is Coach Wade coming at you. I'm going to be on your show. So anyways, that was my tape, just like everybody else. And, ended up getting the phone call that they were interested in me. And I was so nervous. I'll never forget when I got that first phone call. I was in my apartment in Missouri, and I just lost all my breath. I don't get nervous, so I was like short of breath, and I was trying to talk. And she was like, hey, I just want you to know everybody here thinks that you're completely full of crap in casting. And I went out and researched you, and I found newspaper articles from Honduras of you breaking records in kayaking. The people in casting were like, yeah, there's no way somebody has done all this stuff that they say that they've done. And so she was a real champion for me to go out there and to really put my stamp on the game as being an original. And so we'll fast forward a little bit. And so I go through casting, and I go to the week of casting and blowing every interview out of the park. And naturally I have a lot of confidence. People perceive that as arrogance, but arrogance is thinking that you're better than other people. And I don't think I'm better than other people. Confidence is having that knowledge inside that really you can do anything you put your mind to. So anyway, we're in casting, and the same casting agent is looking at me, and I was getting very introverted right before I went in for a big interview. And she was like, hey, listen, you need to bring it, and you could be eliminated. You got to really, and I said, don't ever talk to me again before an interview. And she saw this fire in my eyes because she literally took a step backward. So it was kind of funny. So I go through the interviews, it's just boom, boom, boom. And then I go to CBS. And it's like the final casting for that group of people. And so we go to CBS, and my casting agent is just like really worried. She's pacing, and I can just tell she's really nervous. And I'm like, what are you nervous about? I'm going to nail this. So I go in, and Mark Burnett, I don't even know who he is. Mark Burnett's their executive producers. So I do my thing and come out. So she takes me outside of CBS, and she says, Coach, how did it go? And I start telling her what's happening. I said, there's a guy in the middle, really nice suit. I told him, dude, love the suit, man. It's like, I wear suits for all the coaching games. You look sharp. Anyway, so I start talking. She was like, how's Mark Burnett? Oh, okay, I didn't know that. So she says, we had a really hard time pushing you through casting because nobody's like you. You're an original. And if you think about it, you have the jock, and you have the minority, and you have the older guy, and you have the really handsome person, and you have the nerd. And you have all these typecasts that they have, and I just didn't fit in any one of those molds. And so it was really cool that she said, I just didn't think that they were going to cast you because you didn't fit into any of the stereotypes. She was really relieved. I got the call. And so one last thing about this whole journey is that they call me. And the whole time, when are we leaving? We don't know. We're not going to tell you. And so they call me, and they're like, all right, you're on the show. You're leaving in a week. And I said, I can't go. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I said, I can't go. I'm right in the middle of soccer season. The girls won't understand. We're off to the best start in university history. We're 9-0-1. I can't leave. And they got so mad at me, and they're like, you are screwing yourself in Hollywood. We will blackball you in Hollywood. I'm like, I don't care about Hollywood. And so they were really upset about it. And I basically was like, I'm not going to leave these girls. So they slammed down the phone, completely ticked off. I get another phone call. You need to rethink this decision. And I just said, I can't do it. So I talked to my boss and just randomly bring up in conversation, hey, I turned down Survivor. Isn't that funny? And my boss went nuts. And she was like, you will go on that show as your sports supervisor. I demand that you go on that show. I'm ordering you to go on that show. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I was like, the girls aren't going to understand. She's like, they'll understand. Go on that show. So I call them back, and they're like, nope, sorry, we already filled your slot. And I'm like, okay, great, see you later. And they were like, no, wait, hold on a second. They're like, okay, so listen, we need you to sign a letter. We need to fill out an affidavit. We're going to send you another contract that says you're not going to back out on us, da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, I'm not signing any of that. I'm giving you my word. I will be there. I'm not backing out. 100% I'm going on the show. Long story short, that was it. Didn't sign anything. Flew down, and my goodness, how grateful I am that after telling them no, I followed through with it, and they followed through with it, and the rest is history.
To me, the most interesting part of the story you just told was when you mentioned how the casting team almost didn't cast you because you were an original and didn't fit the mold of a stereotypical Survivor castaway. And one of the problems I think now with the game is that I think they're trying too hard to cast two stereotypes. And I'm so glad that they overlooked that with you because you are an original. I remember you were a guest on the Survivor After Show with Parvati during Karamoan, talking about Brandon. And I remember she brought up a fact that I didn't even realize until she brought it up. And it was like one of those light bulb moments. I was like, wow, you're right. When she started talking about the nicknaming and how you would give nicknames to your tribe mates. And, now we see them every single season, nicknames here, nicknames there. And recently they were probably made most famous by former federal agent Philip Shepard with his Stealth R Us alliance.
Well, Stealth R Us is incorporated today here in the Philippine Islands, specifically in the Cameroon Islands of the Philippines, with myself, the specialist. We have Dawn as True Grit. We have Andrea as the Eliminator. Hashtag as the Eliminator. She's still Divinity. We also have Eric, the Silent One. We have Brenda as Serenity. And then we have Sherry is also in Stealth R Us. However, she is the first fan and the first double agent to be incorporated into Stealth R Us. And as such, her role has been limited. The amount of information that is shared is still very limited. And we gave her the name Tenacity. I should say rather, I, and only I, reserve the right to give the names of the participants in Stealth R Us. Should I prevail, by the way, my real name, my hidden name, only to be spoken when I am offered a check for $1 million, will be revealed in Stealth R Us. Now, that said, currently in the game, we have only one that's been excommunicated, and that would be Malcolm. He was called the Enforcer.
You were the first person to give tribe mates nicknames and get notable airtime credit for it, so you are a Survivor original in more ways than one.
Coach approached Steven and I and give us all nicknames. Coach says I'm the Warrior due to previous challenges and things, and Steven is now the Wizard. I asked him what was Tyson's name, and he said, well, Tyson's just Tyson. So, okay, well, Debbie is Little Debbie. So, I don't know. Coach likes the nicknames. I'll go along with it. Coach give himself the nickname of Dragon Slayer because he's going to slay Brendan, So, hell, whatever he wants to call us, he can call us. But I'll probably refer to him as Coach, Tyson, Debbie, and Steve-O. But we are the Power Alliance, and whatever it takes to get it to the Final Five. And I'll do it. But when I get there, I'm not settling for fourth and fifth for Steven and myself.
Excellent point. Imitation is the finest form of flattery, they say. So when people come out there and slightly imitate me, people got really mad when Philip came out in his first season, and everybody was saying, this guy's a poor man's coach. And I would respond to that and just say, he's a little bit different than me. The one thing that I would say was, I do know how to speak in front of people, and Philip kind of stuttered a little bit, and had dry mouth. So I kind of made fun of him for that. In terms of eloquence, you can't really compare. But in terms of trying to be an original and nicknaming alliances and everything, then it's a form of flattery. So I was glad that I was able to make that trend. I really went out there to change the game. That was my whole MO. I didn't want to be a small fish in a big pond. I wanted to change the game. And so if I had a hand in the history or changing it, then, again, I feel very blessed.
And you had more hair than Philip.
Well, I had more hair then than I do now, but at least it's not completely fallen out. But that takes years off of your life. Everybody that says, is it real? I'll send you a picture after we get done, and I'll show you, just the before and after photos is pretty crazy. funny thing is, I saw my father after the show, and I come to give him a big hug, and my parents stopped watching the show midway through my first season, and, all that I had to process about how they were portraying me. And, of course, it hurt me at the time. And Heroes and Villains, I was very much a broken man, just trying to reach out to people saying, look, guys, I'm normal, okay? Yeah, I can be over the top, and yes, I can quote Nietzsche and tell everybody that I'm the best at everything, trying to psych myself up for this game. But it was very difficult. And then, of course, going in South Pacific and looking back on the whole trilogy, I feel very indebted to Survivor and the producers for doing what they did that first season. But anyways, at the time, it was a difficult pill to swallow. And, my father and mother stopped watching it. And my dad said, I'm not going to watch my son be made a jackass on national TV. And so I see my dad, and I go to give him a big hug. I still got my beard. I didn't shave. I just look emaciated and wasted. And I'm like, going to give my dad a big hug. And he's like, no, I'm not giving you a hug. He's like, shave that beard. And I'm like, Dad, come on, give me a hug. I love you, man. He's like, you know what? That just took 10 years off your life. I hope you remember that on your deathbed. That was what he said to me. And I was like, it was crazy. I love my dad. He's awesome. But it was just really funny that it's true. That definitely took years off my life, and everybody else has gone deep into the game.
Well, you can really see the toll on you and the other players, and Tocantins was a geographically intriguing season because most people, when they think of Survivor, they think of pristine beaches, clear, tranquil water, but you had a different situation because your season was in the arid Brazilian highlands, and it reminds me of back in Australia, season 2. Was it tougher being in the Tocantins environment rather than a beach setting, or did you not mind the unique Survivor location?
That was the last really remote season that they did. It was brutal on the crew. They were tore up. And when we're doing an interview, we can slap at the bugs that are biting us. They could not. They're filming. They were warriors out there. And it was too remote. It took 2 days to get there, and it was the last true location. They make it look like it's out in the middle of nowhere, but it's not. You're 30 minutes from a resort. In Tocantins, we were 6 hours from a paved road, so it was brutal. I love that environment. When people ask me, I've been all over the world multiple times, and they ask me where my favorite place was, and I'll tell them Tocantins. I mean, it was an incredible ecosystem. You had the sand dunes of Exile. You had a jungle with anacondas right next to it within 100 yards. You had high savanna and grasslands. It was like no place that I've ever been. And so I really loved it. I thought that was, an amazing place. I mean, the elements were brutal, 123 degrees, the first challenge. That was brutal. Then it started getting cold at night in the middle of it. Not a lot of rain, so we were lucky there. But less than that, I think what really took a toll on me that first game is that, I was really trying to be noble and to sacrifice myself for the greater good. I mean, we would be sitting there before a challenge, and Tyson was flat on his back. Nobody was moving. People were just wasted. It's hard, right? I mean, it's hard when your body is cannibalizing itself. And people were just wasted. So I just started giving away my food. We had a couple of spoons of beans and a couple of spoons of rice twice a day. There were no coconuts. I just started giving my food to everybody. So I lost more weight than anybody in that season. And that was part of the reason. I was giving of myself. And it was part of the reason why when I came back and everybody said, oh, how'd you play? Did you lie and cheat and do everything? And I said, no, I played a very honorable game. I think you guys are going to love how I look and what I come across. I think I portrayed myself as somebody that really sacrificed. I thought for sure they'd show me giving away my food to everybody else. Anyway, none of that stuff made the edit. But again, I'm glad, right? No spilt milk here. But that is what took a toll more than anything else, is that I literally sacrificed my body for everybody else. I mean, I got voted out at 149 pounds. I weigh 200 pounds. And so, I lost a boatload of weight.
I can only imagine what the 4-hour trek to your camp on day 1 must have felt like in the blistering heat. It actually reminded me of the first challenge back in season 11, Survivor Guatemala, when the two tribes had the 11-mile race to the camps.
I think it was closer to 6 hours. We were really, really hard pressed. There was a moment in that, actually. We got to the middle. There's a huge termite mound above our heads. I was wearing, jeans and a black shirt, black blazer, and I almost blacked out, man. And my face went pale, they said, and I leaned up against that termite mound, and everybody was like, Coach, are you okay? And actually, one of the producers were like, Coach, are you okay? Are you okay? In my mind, it was like, wow, I'm going to get medevac from this game. And it hasn't even started. So I was like, yeah, I'm okay. I leaned up against that thing. So I was completely cold. It was wild, man. That was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do in life, because we had all that stuff, right? The other tribe, they didn't get hardly anything. They got a couple of melons and whatnot. I mean, we had all the water, all the beans. We were transporting on those bamboo poles literally hundreds of pounds. and it was brutal. That was when I realized, this game's no joke. Everybody that doesn't know the show, hey, do they give you food? Hey, you got porta potties out there? And, we did that trek, and we had the water that we packed in. Then we couldn't boil any water, so we didn't have any water the next day. Then we go to a challenge, and we're literally, as a soccer coach, I'm thinking, wow, this is negligent. We're going 48 hours without a drop of water. It's 123 degrees. We're getting ready for the first challenge, and right before the cameras start rolling, I literally think, okay, where's the water, guys? I mean, we're dehydrated. This is dangerous. Where's the granola bar? I didn't ask for that, but basically it's just like, all right, ready to go? And we get done with the challenge. Everybody's coughing up sand and just wrecked from sprinting in 123-degree weather. And I'm looking around thinking, certainly they're going to give us some water. Our canteens are empty. Nope. I was like, wow, this is as real as it gets.
And it wasn't the best choice, I think, on production side to make one of the tribe colors black in that heat.
It was pretty crazy.
We talked about how Tocantins was a very simplistic season compared to the game today. So do you think you would have enjoyed the experience as much or done as well your first time around had the game been like it is today with so many advantages and tribe swaps and people backstabbing their alliance left and right?
I don't think so. Maybe I would have been able to adapt. I mean, one thing that they didn't show in that first season is that I am really a likable person. I know you don't think that. I mean, when the camera turns on, my energy ratchets up several notches. I mean, I get it. I produce symphony shows all year round. I'm in front of audiences all the time. I was a motivational speaker before Survivor. So, I mean, I get that part of it. And so when the camera's on me, I do go up a few notches. So it probably would not have been as enjoyable. I say this across the board. Even in today's world, the first season that you're on, you are getting to know people, you are strategizing, and you are trying to survive, right? Those are the three things that you're doing. And, nowadays, it's still like that, but it's just less so. When you go back for a returning season, it's hit the ground running and you're strategizing like crazy. Well, that's not as enjoyable. So I think I just always kind of be on the outs because I would still try to play the game with honor. I would still try to play the game with loyalty. So people would probably take advantage of that. But, hey, they took advantage of that the first time. I mean, my gullibility with JT and Steven were palatable when I watched that season again. So I think it would be harder for me. I think I would enjoy it a little bit less. But I think that, nonetheless, I could still have moments that I could shine.
I still remember watching the first confessional that aired that you mentioned the Dragon Slayer. Was that something that just came out of your mouth and you said, hey, that sounds pretty good? Or did you craft that before?
No, half the stuff I craft, half the stuff just evolves when I'm out there. But that particular moment, I can't take full credit for it. They were trying to poke holes in the validity of who I was. And I think they were really trying to tell a story of me trying to change the game, et cetera, et cetera. And, I was going to vote off Brandon. I heard that he was coming for me, so I'm going to vote him off. But it went against my thought of let's take the strongest to the end. Well, I gave him a chance. I gave him that first day. Let's play this game together. Let's go to the end. I said that the very first day. And he said no. And he also said, who wants a coach out here? So it came to a time where it was him against me. So I gave the analogy because I do love talking in stories and parables and flowering imagery. And so I said, Boom Boom Mancini, 1980s. Against Duke Koo Kim. Big article in Sports Illustrated. I watched that fight. Duke Koo Kim was killed in the ring. The night before, Duke Koo Kim wrote on his lampshade, "Kill or be killed," in Korean. I believe that's where he was from. And coincidentally, he died in the ring. And so I told the producers, I'm like in my confessional, look, it's kill or be killed. It's him against me. And I have no choice but for my own survival to go against him and eliminate him. I don't want to, but that's what I have to do. Then he looked at me and was like, yeah, that's not going to cut it. And I was like, okay. And so my mind quickly was thinking and spinning. And I'm like, all right, well, there's an ancient Japanese samurai proverb, which there wasn't. But in the moment I made that up. I said, there's an ancient Japanese samurai proverb that says, if you want to defeat the army and win the war, you need to cut the head off the dragon. Brendan is the dragon. And so that's where it kind of clicked. And they said, wow. They were like, so if you slay the dragon, that makes you the dragon slayer. And I was like, that's right. I'm the dragon slayer.
Okay. Once the votes are read, the decision is final. Person voted out will be asked to leave the tribal council area immediately. I'll read the votes. First vote. Coach. Coach. 2 votes, Coach. Brendan. 2 votes, Coach. 1 vote, Brendan. Brendan. 2 votes, Coach. 2 votes, Brendan. Brendan. That's 3 votes Brendan, 2 votes Coach. Sierra. That's 3 votes Brendan, 2 votes Coach, 1 vote Sierra. Sierra. 3 votes Brendan, 2 votes Coach, 2 votes Sierra. We're tied. 3 votes Sierra, 3 votes Brendan, 2 votes Coach, 1 vote left. 8th person voted out of Survivor Tocantins and the first member of our jury. Brendan, need to bring me your torch. Brendan, job is spoken. Good luck, fellas.
I've said from the very beginning that I wanted to walk the path of the noble warrior and finding that great competition that you could pit yourself against.
And then you voted out Brendan.
Yeah. I will explain this to you.
I'm sure you will.
Because Brendan pitted himself against me. If it's war one-on-one...
I thought that's what you wanted.
Exactly, and I won. Thank you. Exactly. I outsmarted him, I outfoxed him, and at the moment, sorry to say, I'm out-leading him. So okay. I won that battle. Now, as far as the other people, if I'm going to have trust in this tribe, we are going to be on the same page, and we are going to battle each other in an honorable fashion. If I give them my word, I'm not going to go back on that.
So an honorable battle to you then means as long as we both agree on how we're going to play this, I'll battle you.
Absolutely. I will be a ravenous wolf for anybody that wants to go head-to-head with me, and I will cut them off at the knees with no remorse and no regret.
And it was kind of at that point where I really began to have fun. Up to that point, I was trying to coach these people. I was trying to make survival. I was trying to do all these things. And it was really at that moment that it clicked. By golly, I'm making a TV show. And I know that my natural personality is going to come across as somebody that's, let's take it even a step further. Because all the stuff before that, the iron sharpens iron, the let's take the strongest to the end, all that kind of stuff, that was all about authentic me. I mean, the rest was authentic as well. But then I finally was like, you know what? Out of all these things that we're doing out here, 99% of it's going to end up on the cutting room floor. My stuff is not going to end up on the cutting room floor. And so that's when the Dragon Slayer and the Warrior and the Princess and all these nicknames came out. And so that was kind of the beginning of it. And that was when I really began to have fun out there, because I realized, hey, I don't just have to be out here playing this game. I can come out here and create my own world. I mean, who doesn't want to create their own world? Why do we read books? Why do we go to movies? Why do we play video games? Because we're trying to momentarily escape from the mundaneness of this world. And so I was just able to do all that on national TV.
And I think a lot of castaways forget that this is a game. It's supposed to be fun. And I'm glad that you identified that.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I liked the most about this last season, is that those contestants were having fun. Those conditions were miserable. And to watch them go to challenges and tribal and just be smiling because they were miserable was something that I really enjoyed about this last season.
I agree. This past season, David versus Goliath, I really enjoyed. And speaking of smiling and being miserable at the same time, let's talk about your adventure on Exile Island. Day 34, I've seen every single episode of Survivor, and I must say, that's probably one of my favorite segments of all time as a viewer. Just the production value of it and what we were able to see was just magnificent, between the narrative that you were telling and the aerial shots and the sand dune and you carving your cane. Was Exile Island everything that you set out for it to be?
Yeah, I think that Exile Island was quite possibly one of the most interesting, spiritually deep and resonant experiences of my life. And let's face it, you know, Jeff wrote on one of his blogs, Coach was probably scared to go out there. I mean, obviously there was a little part of me that, you know, you're going into the unknown, and a little bit of fear, I think, is healthy.
First order of business. You're sending one person to Exile Island. They will not go on the reward. They will not go back to camp. They will have another hot, probably wet stay away from all of the politics of what is going on in these last few days. Exile is the one place you do not want to be on day 34.
The volunteers. Let's be noble, Coach. Okay, let's do this.
Yep.
Me and you're the only two that haven't been, man.
You bet.
Thank you, JT.
Coach, how you feel about going to exile?
I'm good. I'm going to take the monastic approach. I'm not going to build a fire, not going to eat. Just going to meditate.
Is there something to what Aaron said about maybe trying to put yourself in a position so that you've had the worst experience at exile?
I want it to be tough on me. That's for sure. I'm not going to minimize everybody's experience. In fact, I'm disappointed that Erin would say that. You know, since the beginning of the game, she wanted to try to cut me down a little bit. And a lot of times when people do that, it's to vault themselves over. I think maybe she wants to leave here with the toughest exile experience, and I don't want to take that away from her. As far as coming back and winning immunity, my body is about this close right now from total disaster. You know, I've got discs on the right side that have ruptured. I feel my left one is about ready to slip. My asthma's choking me up so bad I can't breathe. There's no excuse about if I win immunity or if I don't win immunity. I make no excuses. So, you know, you can throw stones at me, you can, everybody else can, and I go like this. Give me your best shot. Hit me with your best shot, Pat Minotaur. Doesn't matter to me.
But I get out there, and there's one producer out there, and he tells me, hey, there's these big cats that are walking around, and we're in their territory, so you can't leave my site, et cetera, et cetera. And, of course, the first thing I did was pretend like I was going to the bathroom and leave his site because I wanted to follow these tracks, and he got really mad at me. They're not supposed to talk to you. So I said, hey, do you like your job? It's pretty awesome being a producer on Survivor. And he didn't say anything. I said, come on, man, it's just you and I. He's like, it's all right. I mean, I film all this time, and it gets maybe 10 seconds of airtime. And I looked at him dead in the eye, and I said, we're going to change that this time. And it was really ironic that, you know, at that point I was at a place of extreme spiritual enlightenment. I was at a place of extreme hunger, but I felt amazing. And being out there away from camp, I didn't have to deal with any of the negativity. In my mind, I was dealing with none of the gameplay, and it was just so refreshing to be there. And I think if it had come earlier in the game, it would have been cool. The fact that it was my exit episode made it even better. It made it even more epic. So I was out there giving my heart and soul to the environment, to myself, to God, everything. It was very spiritual. And then, you know, of course, going through that experience and forgetting a lot of it. The best thing about being out there is that it was captured on film, every moment of it. And so I recollected certain things, but then on the back end, that was back when they would fly you to CBS in New York to do interviews. So it was right before the finale, and we fast forward, 6-8 months, and I get there, and I said, listen, I got to see this episode because I was flying during the episode. And so they gave me a DVD of the episode and said, watch this in your hotel room. That way you're more prepped for the interviews the next day. So I watched this in my hotel room in New York by myself at about midnight, 12:30 when I got in, and just watching myself made me tear up and really start to lose it emotionally because I saw my body at 149 pounds. I saw the trauma that I was going through, and I saw the resilience. And you know inwardly, but you don't know outwardly what it's portraying. And so to see that was very fulfilling for me.
When you were voted out at Tribal Council on day 36 and Jeff snuffed your torch, was it more of a relief because you were physically exhausted, or was it more of a disappointment because you were so close to making it to day 39?
I was devastated. And I wasn't devastated for myself. I was devastated for the show. And Jeff came and talked to me, which I guess is fairly unusual. And he came up to me and said, take off your blindfold, because I was, ready to go to Ponderosa. He said, take off your blindfold, Coach. And I just said, I'm sorry, man. He's like, what do you got to be sorry about? I wanted to take the strongest to the end. I was so close to changing this game. And he looked at me and he's like, you don't know what you've done, do you? I was like, yeah, I failed. And I was emotional. And he said, you've done really what nobody else has done. You're going to get more airtime than anybody in the history of the show. And I was like, I don't know about that. That's not what I'm doing. I'm out here trying to change this game, trying to take the strongest to the end. I was right there. And it was just interesting because I think in that moment he saw that I was for real, whether you believe me or not, whether you enjoyed my journey, whether you got behind that persona, whatever it was, he saw in that moment that it was 100% authentic, that I was out there really trying to practice what I preached. And it wasn't just all a sense of false bravado.
Well, 2 seasons after Tocantins, you were asked to return to Survivor for the 20th season, Heroes vs. Villains, to seek your redemption.
This time, I slay everyone and trust no one. This is my chance for redemption.
And to me, Heroes vs. Villains, and to many other fans of the show, is the best season in Survivor history, based on the collective of players, the structure of the season, production value, and overall gameplay. So when you were asked to return for Survivor's 20th season, was it an immediate yes?
Yeah, I mean, I had just gotten done with the show. The show aired. And then as the finale was going on, we're getting phone calls to go play again. And so from our point of view, it was very spectacular. We were just in that zone. Those of us that had just got through playing, we were just used to it. It was just like, this is our job. This is our life. So, I immediately said, yeah, let's go. I'll jump in with both feet. I had seen the edit. I had approached, in my own inner subconscious, a way that I was going to approach the game the second time around to really relate to the audience so they could see that I was just a normal guy. And I went out there with my emotions on my sleeve.
Going back to you not really knowing much about the show when you first went on Survivor, did you know all the castaways that you were competing with on Heroes vs. Villains?
Nope. I did not know Candace. I did not know Danielle. Of course, you know people. You know people because they're at the finale or they're legends. So you kind of know people. But I knew Rupert. I knew Tom Westman. I knew Colby. But I never watched any of their seasons. I didn't know Russell. Didn't know Courtney. I knew Jerry. I knew Boston Rob. I knew Tyson. Everybody else was a complete mystery to me. Watching back over those seasons now, I'm like, oh, man, I should have, could have, would have. Oh, I also knew Parvati because I'd seen Fans versus Favorites.
One of my favorite moments of the season was actually the opening segment of Survivor Heroes vs. Villains, and Jeff asked all the castaways whether or not they thought they were on the wrong tribe, and not a surprise, all the villains except for Jerry Manthe raised their hands to say that they thought they were on the wrong tribe. So due to the fact that your game was based on honor and integrity to your alliance the first time around, were you surprised to be put on the villains tribe? Because to be honest, I was a bit shocked.
Obviously. I mean, I really thought that I was a hero. I knew that the polarizing of my persona was going to have that type of effect. I was surprised about it, but it is what it is. I was surprised. Other people were surprised. But if you think about it, I really wasn't a hero or a villain in terms of my edit. I think Jeff probably thought I was a hero, but he knew that the public reaction, you couldn't put me on the hero tribe. So they could have just left me off of that season entirely. But because I had just gotten done, because I had been such a big character, they wanted to include me. So what are you going to do? Guys, stick me on one tribe. I think the outcry would have been far greater if they would have put me on a hero tribe.
Do you think you would have possibly fared better in the game if you played on the heroes tribe with JT rather than the villains tribe with Tyson?
No, I'm certain 100% that I would have been able to play with those players much more effectively than being on the villains tribe.
Was it more of a pressure knowing that JT and Tyson were both in the game with you?
No, I mean, I think it was actually an added comfort because you know those people, you assume that they're going to play with you, but you never know.
It's a whole new game.
It is, indeed, indeed.
Now, what I always found interesting was on your tribal council voting ballots, you would put a number in the corner. And I think on the first one, you said something along the lines of, all that matters is the number.
This one isn't for you, Randy. Sorry it had to be you. The only important thing on this piece of paper is this number up here.
I've always wondered, what was that all about?
I was trying to come up with different ways to tell a story. And so I actually was putting numbers up there because I wanted to spell out Dragon Slayer. And I calculated out that if I made a certain amount of tribal councils, that I could spell out Dragon Slayer. And I think in the middle of it, I thought, if I don't go to tribal council every time, I have to maybe shorten it and maybe put Dragon and then SLYR or, DRGN. I was always thinking about that kind of stuff. So that's why I was trying to spell out phonetically Dragon Slayer, 4 for a D, whatever R is, 1 for an A. So that's what I was doing.
Were you ever nervous that your tribe mates might figure out who your votes were going to because they kept seeing these numbers on the parchment?
I don't think so. I mean, I didn't say a word to anybody. They just saw these numbers up there.
Now, in your first season, you weren't particularly known for being a challenge beast, but for Heroes vs. Villains, you were up against a lot of strong challenge competitors, including Colby Donaldson, who won 5 individual immunity challenges and was the first to do so in Survivor history during Season 2 in Australia. Now, you actually competed against Colby during the season's first challenge and beat him. So was that one of the highlights of the season for you, beating Colby Donaldson in a challenge?
Yeah, for me, Survivor is something where you look at yourself in a mirror and you realize, do you measure up or not? Do you measure up physically? Do you measure up in terms of being a big character? Do you measure up gameplay? And so I'm continually evaluating myself in life and also in the game. Easier on Survivor because you get to look at yourself on TV in a mirror. So I realized that first time I was a joke physically, right? I mean, I came out, I looked great. I was training a certain way, training the wrong way. I would not ever train a college soccer team the way that I trained to go out there. But for some reason in my mind, I was thinking I want to look good and I want to be strong, but I was not doing any sprinting. I was not doing any mental challenges. I was doing none of that. And so I was very unprepared for going into the challenges. And I was embarrassed that I was not stronger. And so going into the second time around, I trained completely different. And I really slapping my chest and that kind of stuff before challenges was, a way like if you're entering in the cage with MMA to get yourself jazzed and jacked up for what's about to come. And so I was super excited that I was able to outmaneuver Colby and kind of break his spirit a little bit in the game. At least that's what his tribe told me later, that, I kind of broke his spirit by doing that out of the gate.
Here we go, next round. It is Colby and Tom taking on Coach and Russell. You're coming to lane 9, the last lane. Survivors ready.
You guys got it. You got it.
Go. Russell digging for the villains. Tom and Colby digging for the heroes. Coach hanging back, just watching. Not going to let anybody get a free sprint to the finish. A big matchup. 4 strong guys. 4 fit guys. This will not be an easy path to get back to your mat. Whoever gets this point is going to earn it. Russell has the bag for the villain. Tries to toss it to Coach. Doesn't work. Colby now has a hand on it. This is full on. Coach takes Colby over. Colby trying to push Coach off. Coach not having it.
Get on your feet, Tom.
Colby inching forward.
Drag him up.
Russell now trying to get free of Tom. Colby ready to make a move.
Leave us front alone, Coach. Get Colby. Come on.
Go! Colby now dragging Coach. Russell really being tough on Tom. Play fair down there. Play fair. Colby eyeing that mat. He's just got to make sure Coach doesn't drag him to the other mat. Keep it up, Coach. Coach now dragging Colby. Nice, Tom. Here comes Tom and Russell. Scores for the villains.
Colby getting owned by Coach? Oh my gosh, dude. I can only imagine what Colby's thinking. He's got to be like, I may as well just become a woman, because there's no point on trying to maintain my masculinity now.
Villains now lead 2-1.
And so, it was very fulfilling for me. I tried during my rounds, and I don't know if you saw it, but I tried to be consistent. If I was up against Colby, if I was up against Tom Westman, I was trying to win that round, even though the villains didn't go on a huge tear. I tried to win whatever I was doing, and so I was super into it and trying to go back and dispel that myth that I'm bad in challenges and completely over-the-top, psychotic liar, or whatever else people would say about me after that first season. So, yeah, it was very satisfactory.
Well, unfortunately, you were the 9th person voted out on day 21.
Once the votes are read, the decision is final. Person voted out will be asked to leave the tribal council area immediately. I'll read the votes. First vote, Coach. Coach. 2 votes, Coach. Courtney. 2 votes, Coach. 1 vote, Courtney. Courtney. That's 2 votes, Coach. 2 votes, Courtney. Courtney. 3 votes, Courtney. 2 votes, Coach. Coach. We're tied. That's 3 votes, Coach. 3 votes, Courtney. 1 vote left. 9th person voted out of Survivor Heroes versus Villains, and the first member of our jury. Coach, need to bring me your torch.
Good luck, guys.
Coach, tribe has spoken. Time for you to go.
And it kind of spiraled out of hand for the Villains tribe when Tyson voted himself out. And that's probably one of the defining tribal councils of the whole season. That, and of course, the Double Idol Tribal Council.
6th person voted out of Survivor, Heroes versus Villains. Tyson.
Oh my God.
Tyson, tribe has spoken. Time for you to go.
Do you ever play out in your head what the game might have been like if Tyson actually didn't vote himself out?
Yeah, I mean, we all do, right? Tyson and Boston Rob have won, so I think they don't really think about it as much as I do. And, of course, when people are like, South Pacific is one of the worst seasons and Heroes and Villains is one of the best seasons, just as a season as a whole, that irritates me a little bit because I'd like for the season that I did best on to be one of the most liked seasons, and Heroes and Villains was my worst outing. But they kind of have that monkey off their back. For me, I'm never going to win this game. Let's face it. That's just reality. I know for a fact that speaking to them after the game, Tom Westman and Colby and Rupert and JT and players like that, man, they would have loved to play with me because they knew that I was loyal. And that's one thing in Survivor. If you can find somebody that's loyal, that's gullible enough or idiotic enough to just say, this is what I'm doing, everybody. I'm a blank sheet. You guys can read me. That's somebody that people want to play with. And so I think I would have done exceptionally well. I think I would have gotten the merge. Things would have been completely different. I think you could have seen something like me and Colby, me and Rupert, in the finals. But that's not to be. So Tyson was, and good for him. I bet that he had a lot of negativity in his mind flashing back on that moment. And he was lucky enough to go and get another shot in Blood versus Water.
You mentioned Survivor South Pacific, which was the third season that you played on. So let's talk about season 23, which aired in 2011, and it was your third time in 6 seasons competing on Survivor. So when you got the call asking if you wanted to come back on the show, were you told that it would be the same setup as the previous season and that it would be 2 former players, each playing on a tribe of new players, and Redemption Island would be involved?
I think they told me that late in the game. They're very cryptic, understandably so. And so I think that they might have said that as I was getting on the plane, and I had already given them my phone. I did say that when they first called me and they said, we have a special thing planned, we want you to be a part of it. Are you ready? And it was, in 2 weeks. And I'm like, gosh, okay, let me rearrange all my plans. And so it was pretty frenetic getting ready to get out. But I did say I don't really want to play against Russell. And if he's out there, I'd rather not play. And so they said something like, you don't have to worry. Because they're very cryptic, understandably so. Everything is top secret, and I can respect that.
What were your initial thoughts when you found out that Ozzy was the other returning player?
I honestly think it was supposed to be me and Philip could not physically do back-to-back seasons. And I've spoken to Philip. I mean, what made sense was 2 huge characters coming out there, but Philip could not physically or emotionally go back-to-back. So I think maybe Ozzy was something that was kind of an afterthought. I mean, it was a very weird pairing, but they were already into it with me, and maybe Philip said no, and they were looking for somebody that didn't have a serious job and needed a vacation, and Ozzy's a perfect candidate. And so they just picked him at the last second. I was actually blown away. I thought it was going to be Philip, and I saw Ozzy in the airport, and I literally could not believe it. And my mind started going, and I was like, what is this? What is this? Because they flew us down separate than the rest of the cast, so that the cast would be surprised when we first got out there.
Over the raging waters of the South Pacific, 2 of Survivor's most memorable players, Ozzy and Coach, are returning for a shot at redemption.
I've played this game twice. I haven't been successful. This time, I'm trying to control my sense of self-righteousness and judgment on the others. I'm back because this is one more shot for me to prove to everybody that I can own this game and that it can be done with honor and integrity.
I was intrigued by the pairing too because the season before was Survivor Redemption Island, and the whole concept was basically Rob versus Russell, which was the challenge that started during the finale for Heroes versus Villains.
Austin Rob, quick question. If you and Russell had teamed up, how might that have gone?
It would have gone pretty good. The problem with Russell, and I think what he's trying to say to you, is that he doesn't play the game to win. And it's clear in his strategy. He plays a good game to get to the end, but he doesn't play a game to win the game. And that's where he and I differ, among other things as well. If we had teamed up, we could have done pretty well together, I think.
And you play the game to win?
I do play the game to win.
When have you won?
I haven't. But I
Just
guarantee,
saying.
given the opportunity, I'd gladly go back and kick your ass all over the island.
That could be a future season, Rob versus Russell.
When the trailer came on for Survivor South Pacific at the end of Redemption Island, they said 2 returning players are coming. You would think that it was the rivalry aspect again. And then I was so excited to see you because you make a season and it's so fun to watch you. But I was intrigued that it was Ozzy because he's never played with you and he was on earlier seasons than you. So it was intriguing seeing that pairing, but it all turned out well for you because you ended up beating Ozzy in the long run. What was fascinating, though, as I said, I like to pick up on little things. Survivor South Pacific was originally going to be Survivor Tonga, but due to economic problems, the Tonga location was pulled. So they went back to Samoa and called the season Survivor South Pacific. Brad fact, because 2 seasons had already been filmed in Samoa, Survivor Samoa, of course, and then also Survivor Heroes versus Villains. So I'm curious, was your Upolu camp from Survivor South Pacific the same location as the Heroes Tribe camp or the Villains Tribe camp from Survivor Heroes versus Villains? Do you know?
I don't remember. Because, see, the thing is, everything looked so different. I'm pretty sure that it was the Heroes, but I kept seeing stuff. And the beaches kind of looked the same, and so for a minute I thought I was having flashbacks. So I can't tell you specifically about that. But that's interesting. I actually did not know that it was supposed to be in Tonga.
Yeah, well, that's why it was called South Pacific, because they had to change the name and they wouldn't do Survivor Samoa again.
Interesting.
And you know what else was interesting was that the buff colors were red and blue again, just like on Heroes versus Villains. Brad fact!
Wow. Yeah, you pick up on things. That's cool. I didn't notice any of that stuff.
You got the blue buff this time around. So I guess the egg that you smashed during the opening segment to reveal which tribe you were going to be on truly revealed that you are a hero and not a villain in the Survivor world.
There you go. That was pretty funny when we broke the egg and the tribe's reaction. Everyone's like, we don't want Coach, really. And Ozzy was like, yeah, that's awesome.
All right, it is time to find out which tribe Coach and Ozzy are going to be on. There are 2 eggs. One has blue paint inside. One has red paint inside. Choose your egg.
Oh, man.
Don't smash it yet. All right, 3, 2, 1, smash.
On my heart.
I couldn't have been happier that it was Ozzy on my tribe. Ozzy! Freaking Ozzy from Cook Islands, fans versus favorites. As a huge fan of Survivor, it's absolutely a thrill to be playing with somebody I've watched and to some extent idolized.
Coach joins the blue tribe.
I did not want to see Coach's egg bleed blue. It did. I've never ever seen a dragon slayer, and oh God, there ain't no dragons. My hell, he's in his 40s. Oh God.
Here's your bag and your water bottle. Say hello.
Hello. Hey guys, how you doing? I'm not feeling a good vibe from the blue tribe. I see one lady that's shooting daggers at me. It's the one that said, we're temporary players. So right away I've got like negative vibes. So negative that I kind of grabbed a hold of my cheeks right here and thought, hold on for the ride because it's going to be rocky in the beginning. You're going to have twice the Slayer charm to get through these first couple of days.
Yeah, I know. When Christine said they're temporary players, I'm like, that's the worst thing to start out by saying. You don't even have to like the returning player coming back. Rule number 1, don't get on someone's bad side 15 seconds into the game.
Woman in the front.
Christine.
Christine, reaction to seeing Coach and Ozzy coming back into this game.
Ozzy and the Dragon Warrior? It's good to see them, you know. It's nice.
Meaning?
They're temporary players.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah, it's unfortunate I didn't use any of that at Final Tribal. I should have. And I came in with a black mark. Everybody thought I was crazy. Everybody thought I was weak at challenges. I mean, I'm not like Ozzy. I was ostracized in the very beginning, and for me to quickly put out pieces and try to put puzzles together was very difficult, but I had to really survive. I was the epitome of being an outcast and working my way into a position of power. But I didn't say that at Final Tribal. Too bad. But yeah, I mean, for Christine, for her to say that, obviously if I get any type of power, I'm going to go straight for her.
Now, luckily, you bounced back from that beginning gray area, and you made it to the final 3, and you were the runner-up, receiving 3 out of the 8 votes.
First vote. Coach. Sophie. 1 vote Coach, 1 vote Sophie.
Whoa.
Coach. 2 votes Coach, 1 vote Sophie. Sophie, we're tied. 2 votes Coach, 2 votes Sophie. Coach. 3 votes Coach, 2 votes Sophie. Sophie.
We are tied again. 3 votes Coach, 3 votes Sophie. Sophie. 4 votes Sophie, 3 votes Coach. The winner of Survivor South Pacific, Sophie.
I have to say, though, I was rooting for you to win this season. I was like, this is the one. He's going to do it. And then Sophie ended up winning. Now, you did get Rick, Edna, and Cochran's vote. Were you surprised you didn't get anyone else's?
I thought I'd won, actually. It made sense when you look at the players that were there on the jury. You looked at Jim Rice. He really respected the game. And I think that the one thing that they could change about Survivor that would greatly determine the outcome is if the jury was sequestered and couldn't talk to themselves. And the people that are voted off last have usually the most influence on the jury because they can tell the jury, quote unquote, what's really going on in the game. And for Ozzy to have his ego crushed that he was not in the finals, that essentially I had beaten him, really grated on him. And so he had a great influence on the jury and to my downfall.
Survivor South Pacific was your 3rd time playing the game, and for the first time, you made it to the final tribal council. So does that mean that Survivor South Pacific fulfilled your goals of redemption?
Oh, it was incredibly fulfilling. In fact, at the very beginning, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And at the end, it was just very, very, very fulfilling. I didn't even think, in my mind that I'd ever consider doing another season of Survivor. And I remember talking to Probst, and I just said, man, I think it was at the finale. I said, what do you think about me playing again? I don't think it'll ever get as good as this. I mean, I was in control of the entire game. I was never in jeopardy of getting voted out. I never thought I was going to get voted out. I had an alliance, made it to the end, did well in challenges, was a leader. Everybody respected me. And he says, as a producer, as a host, I would love you to come back. And as your friend, I say that quote unquote as your friend, I don't know if you should come back because it was such a great run for you. And anything else, if you think about it, any other season that I played, it doesn't matter if I played for the next 10 years, back to back to back to back seasons, I'm never going to have a time that's probably as rewarding as that. People are looking at me to lead in challenges. People are looking at me to make the shelter a certain way. And so it was very gratifying.
And believe it or not, you were only 5 votes away from playing a Survivor perfect game by not receiving any tribal council votes and then getting every jury vote at the final tribal council. You were 5 votes away from tying JT, who was the only other person to play the perfect game up until that point.
5 votes away. That's funny. 5 votes away, that's true. I'll take that. But I couldn't close it at tribal, and there was a bitter jury, and it was just how it is.
I always like to ask this question when I get the chance to talk with Survivor players. Do you keep in touch with any of the other castaways that you played alongside during any of your seasons?
Yeah, I think outside the game, outside of the quote-unquote shenanigans in the game, I feel like I'm fairly well-liked, and I enjoy people that I played with. I don't have any resentment. I was upset with Ozzy for a while, and I let that go because, let's face it, Ozzy's not thinking about me, right? Anytime you have a grudge against somebody, anytime you have resentment against somebody, it only hurts you. They're not thinking about you. They're not saying, oh, wow, Coach is thinking bad thoughts about me today. They don't care. So, I had to let it go and own up to my own mistakes in the game and what I could have done differently and possibly take Ozzy to the end. But, I'm good friends with, I feel like a lot of people. It's a unique experience that we've all gone through and only we have shared. You and I are never going to share that bond of being out there. And I think that's one thing that really surprises you when you go on Survivor. You don't really realize, for the first time, you don't realize this fraternity of players, this club that you're automatically accepted into, right? It doesn't matter who it is. I could reach out and try to find the number for somebody if I was going to Tampa and they lived in Tampa, even if I'd never played with them. And we could have that rapport and we could get together and break bread, so to speak. And so that's something that's super cool.
If you were to go back, any former players that you'd like to play with that maybe you haven't played with before?
It would be nice to play with the whole Heroes tribe. I mean, I never really played with them. I played on the same season as them, but it would be nice to play with that tribe. I'd like to go play with some of the old school players. I love the old school. Big Tom, somebody that I would love to talk to. I've never actually spoken to him. I'd love to talk to him and shake his hand and play with him. I mean, he was a hoot. There are those big character players that I would love to play with.
You playing with Big Tom would be so much fun to watch because you both come from similar Survivor backgrounds. Your first seasons were in dry, non-beach settings, yours Tocantins and his Africa. And then you both came back to an all-star season at a beach setting with mega players, him all-stars and you heroes versus villains. Brad fact! So I don't know if that'll have anything to do with how you two would play the game together, but as a viewer and a fan, that would be so much fun to watch because of that dynamic.
With the struggle for fire behind them, the members of Shapira turned their attention to other problems, like understanding Big Tom.
Hey, we ain't got a good mate among us. You guys get that?
No idea. Big Tom, who knows his language? He's a huge comic relief. I love sitting back and just listening to Big Tom, even if I don't understand anything he says.
Sandy will eat a big gob, then want to come up there and make a big gob of love, and I'll tell her, go eat her.
We need the translator on that one.
Yeah, I think it's time for Big Tom to make a comeback, really. He's been gone too long.
Oh, I agree. And one of the things that is always a letdown, especially with these current seasons that have returning players, is that they don't bring back a lot of the old school players, the players from way back in the day. Whether that's because they don't want to play, if that's the factor, so be it. But I hope they would at least ask. And were you even asked to play on Game Changers?
I was not asked to play on Game Changers, but if you look at Game Changers, in my opinion, it was a season that was done to try to produce some legends. It was a great season to be called that, but let's face it, it wasn't truly Game Changers. They were looking for people to emerge from that season as legends. So it did not hurt my feelings that I did not get the call for that season. There were definitely Game Changers that emerged from that season.
But it was just one of those things where they were putting the label on it so that the narrative would speak about, oh, look who's become a Game Changer. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Well, Coach, we have reached my favorite portion of the game show where I create an original game for my guests to play. It's time for the Game of the Day.
Game of the Day.
Now, earlier I said that this game had a lot to do with one of your Survivor seasons. Well, that's because this game is called Hero or Villain. Hero or Villain. And here's how we play Hero or Villain. Every answer in this game will be one of the 20 castaways that played Survivor on its 20th season, Survivor Heroes vs. Villains. Now, I'll read you a fact about one of the castaways' first time playing the game. Now, keep in mind, some players on Heroes vs. Villains at that point had already played the game 2 times. But all the facts will be about the castaways' first season on Survivor. Now, once I give you the fact, all you have to do to score a point is to say whether that fact pertains to one of the hero castaways or one of the villain castaways by saying either hero or villain. Now, you don't have to know which specific castaway it is, so even if you're unsure who the fact belongs to, take a guess. It's a 50-50 shot. Then, if you are correct, and only if you are correct, you can score a bonus point if you tell me which of the castaways from that tribe the fact is actually referring to. You'll play up to 10 facts, and Coach, if you can score 6 points or more, you will have dragon slayed this game and will be crowned a winner. Those are all the rules, Coach. If you're ready, let's play Hero or Villain. Now remember, you need 6 points by the end of the 10th fact, and just to get you and all the listeners who are playing along in the proper mindset of the game, in case you may have forgotten the full cast of Heroes vs. Villains, I'm going to read off all of the castaways on both the Heroes and the Villains tribes. So for the Heroes tribe, we have Sugar Kuiper, Stephanie LaGrossa, Surrey Fields, Tom Westman, James Clement, J.T. Thomas Jr., Amanda Kimmel, Candace Cody, Rupert Bonham, and Colby Donaldson. And for the Villains tribe, we have Randy Bailey, Tyson Apostle, Rob Mariano, a castaway by the name of Coach Wade, Courtney Yates, Danielle DiLorenzo, Jerry Manthe, Russell Hance, Parvati Shallow, and Sandra Diaz-Twine. Hopefully for you and the listeners who are playing along, that was a helpful castaway refresher. And now, here comes the first fact. This castaway began the season weighing only 93 pounds.
So I'm supposed to say if they were a hero or a villain?
Correct.
Villain.
That is correct. It is villain for 1 point. For a bonus point, you know who it is.
Courtney Yates.
Courtney Yates is correct. Excellent start. 2 points. You remember what season?
She was on China.
Very good. Very good. Here comes your next fact. This castaway had a mini makeout session with another castaway at Tribal Council after it had been revealed that they were voted out.
I'm so glad I watched all these seasons. I could actually answer some of these. If you would have asked me these 6 months ago, I wouldn't have gotten any of them. That would be a hero.
Hero is correct, and I know you mentioned a specific season, hint, hint. This castaway was on.
Oh, no, I got it. No, I know it's Candace from Cook Islands.
Very good. It is Candace from Cook Islands. You got it.
I'm knocking this out of the park.
You already have 4 points. You only need 2 more to win.
Yes.
Here comes your next fact. This castaway stripped down to their birthday suit and said in a confessional, "I'm probably not the stereotypical Mormon."
Well, that's easy. That's a super easy one. That would be villain.
Villain is correct, and for the win, which castaway does that fact belong to?
Tyson on Tocantins.
Being from Utah, you'd think I'd be a shirt and tie, nerdy glasses, but I'm probably not the stereotypical Mormon.
It would have been bad if you missed this one, but luckily you didn't. Tyson is the correct answer, which means with only 3 facts, Coach, you have won this game of hero or villain.
Yes! Awesome.
You have officially dragon slayed this game, so congratulations, and thanks so much, Coach, for playing this game of the day, hero or villain. Hero or villain? Well, Coach, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to join me today on the game show to talk about your Survivor career. I had so much fun, and I hope you did as well.
Awesome. I really enjoyed this. No BS, man. Really enjoyed it. Obviously, I've done a lot of interviews, and sometimes I don't even want to give interviews. I'm very reclusive, but just the energy here, I'm not just saying this, the energy here, this is like one of the best interviews I've ever given. I feel the energy, man. I feel the love on the phone, and it's good.
Well, that truly means a lot for you to say that to me, so thank you very much. And you always have an open invitation to come back onto the game show as my guest if you want to talk some more Survivor or if you just want to play another game.
If I ever go out on Survivor again, let's do another interview.
Sounds like a plan. All right, Coach, thank you again for coming onto the show, and thank you for all the wonderful memories you've given me over the years watching you play Survivor.
Awesome, my man. Appreciate it.
All right, take care, Coach.
Awesome. You too, my man.
Bye-bye. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of The Game Show. My thanks once again to 3-time Survivor castaway and the Dragon Slayer himself, Coach Wade, for being my special guest today. Now, if you'd like to listen to my previous episodes of The Game Show, including the episodes featuring Survivor castaways Russell Hantz, Eric Reichenbach, and Jonathan Penner, all you have to do is check out The Game Show's SoundCloud page by logging on to www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/The Game Show. That's www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/The Game Show. Plus, don't forget to like The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Facebook and follow The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Twitter using the handle @TheGameShowBC and #TheGameShow. But of course, be sure to tune in next time for another exciting episode of The Talk Show, all about the world of television game and competition shows, The Game Show. I'm Bradley Clarke, the Bradster, and I've got to go head off to my coachee class. Bye for now. All of the Survivor audio clips and music are courtesy of the CBS television network.
This edition of The Game Show was created and produced by Bradley Clarke and was recorded at the WRHU studios. This is Austin Angelo speaking.
The Game Show is a Bradley Clarke production. Get your game on.